On December 17th, 1933, at Wrigley Field in Chicago, Illinois, in front of 5,000 fans, the very first NFL championship was held where the New York Giants took on the home team, Chicago Bears, and the very first NFL championship ever held where the Chicago Bears would win and set the stage for what would become the biggest sporting event in the world. Today we're going to dive into the history of this game and what all happened today on Daily Sports History.
With the summer sizzle starting to fizzle, cooler heads are looking to lock in a wellness routine fit for the fall and beyond. Lucky for you, Ritual's high standards don't drop with the temperature. Fully committed to traceable science and sourcing, Ritual is shaking up the supplement industry with high-quality ingredients and scientifically developed formulas. With them, you know what you're taking, where it comes from, and why it's important. They've got every base covered, from their clinically backed women's 18-plus multivitamin to groundbreaking options like stress relief and sleep melatonin, which both use first-of-its-kind bioseries technology designed to optimize formula delivery. And right now, for a limited time, get up to 40% off your first month at ritual.com/podcast.
Welcome to Daily Sports History. I'm Ethan Reese, your guide as you daily learn more about sports history, increasing your sports knowledge. Now, 1933 was not when the NFL actually started. It actually started in 1920, which we covered on a previous episode talking about the American Professional Football Conference, which originally had 14 teams, which included the Chicago Cardinals, who are now the Arizona Cardinals, and the Stanleys, who later became the Chicago Bears. Over the years, the league would change their name to the National Football League and would continue to lose and gain different teams, but eventually would shape into the teams that we know today, such as the New York Giants and the Chicago Bears. Now, every year from 1920 to 31, the winner of the league would be whoever had the best record at the end of the season, which is similar to how college football used to do it as well until they started the BCS. And this was due to challenges to hold games late in winter and the travel expenses, as many of these players held other jobs as well. So it was difficult to travel across the country, or mainly the Eastern Coast and Midwest, as cars and planes were new and the main method of travel was train. But the NFL held a tiebreaker game where the Chicago Bears took on Portsmouth Spartans so they could break the tie. And this led to the idea of holding a championship game, as it seemed to garner a lot of interest. And it proved that a game like this could be held. And it helped that the Boston owner, George Preston Marshall, suggested to the other NFL owners that they make this a regular thing and increase the excitement throughout the season, that there would be a championship, similar to what Major League Baseball would do, as the winner of the American League would just face off against the winner of the National League for the World Series. And at the time, Major League Baseball was the biggest show in town. And although a lot of the owners were hesitant at first, mainly due to the country coming out of the Great Depression and not sure if this would really be successful. But Marshall kept pushing, and the owners eventually implemented it and would start it in 1933. And they would separate the league into two divisions, an Eastern Division and a Western Division. And in the 1933 season, the Bears played at Wrigley Field, of all places. Yes, the historic baseball field is where they played their football games. And to this day, they still play a few college games at Wrigley Field, although it's still very small for a football stadium. And they were led by new head coach George Halas, who transformed them into a powerhouse, showcasing the versatility of offense, disciplined defense, and willingness to adapt to new strategies. And they went 10-2 this season, winning first place in the Western Division, behind key players like Bronco Nagurski, who played fullback and linebacker, and Red Grange, who was a halfback and defensive back. Their offense was a mix of power running and taking advantage of passing situations, as rules changes had expanded the forward pass that season, and their defense was stifling, frequently shutting down teams throughout the season and creating multiple turnovers. And this year, they beat their division rival, the Green Bay Packers, 2 times, showcasing their dominance as they were one of the best teams in the league. And they even faced off against the New York Giants that year, winning 17-7. But they did lose twice, once to the Boston Redskins and once to the Detroit Lions. But after these losses, they always came back. And winning the Western Division meant they got to play in the NFL Championship game, the first one ever held. and they would face off against the New York Giants, who went 11-3 this year, winning first place in the Eastern Division, led by head coach Steve Owen and led by their quarterback Harry Newman, who was a standout passer and really adapted the short passing game, which was instrumental for the New York Giants. And they had also got a new fullback and running back in Ken Strong, who was a versatile dual threat runner and kicker. This season, the Giants really embraced the forward pass as a core element of their offense, leveraging and outmaneuvering the traditional run-heavy opponents. This really showed itself in a 42-0 victory over the Brooklyn Dodgers that year, showing their offensive firepower against a heated rival. Although they did lose games to Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers, it didn't stop them from dominating throughout and led their way into the NFL championship game, which was held at Wrigley Field on December 17, 1933. And though there was kind of a playoff game played the last year, it was not officially a championship game. So this was the first official NFL championship game, which would go on to be played every single year. So the game starts out pretty slow, where the Bears actually, in the first quarter, take the lead with a 16-yard field goal. Then they come back in the second quarter, hit another field goal to take a 6-0 lead. But the Giants fired back in the second quarter with a 29-yard pass from Harry Newman to Red Badgrow and made the field goal, giving them the lead 7-6. And coming out of halftime, the Bears would come out and kick another field goal, giving them the lead 9-7. But the Giants would work their way back, scoring a 1-yard touchdown with Max Carius making the field goal, giving them a 14-9 lead. And the Bears would finally score their first touchdown to end the third quarter with an 8-yard pass to Bill Carr from Bronco Nagurski. And they would make their field goal, giving them the lead 16-14 as they headed into the fourth quarter with the championship on the line. And the Giants would come back and have an 8-yard to Ken Strong from Harry Newman to take the lead 21-16. Sometimes having the ball last gives you the best chance, as the Bears took the ball down and scored a 19-yard touchdown pass to Bill Carr from Bronco Nagurski, each scoring their second touchdown and giving them the final score of 23-21. Now the game stats were very close, as the Giants had 13 first downs and the Bears had 12. But the Bears' defense is what stood out, as they held the Giants' rushing offense under 100 yards, and the Bears themselves rushed for 106 yards. And it was the Giants' passing game that kept them in the game, as Harry Newman went 13 for 19 for 209 yards, which at the time was a very good amount. And the Bears were only able to muster up 150 yards on 7 completions. Now, the Bears didn't run a traditional offense. Now, I mentioned Bronco Nagurski threw touchdown passes. Those were his only 2 passes of the game. And 4 other players threw passes during the game, as they were coming from a different era, and the passing game was not their strong suit. But they needed it to keep up with the Giants' passing game in the game. And despite the fact that the Bears had 8 penalties compared to the Giants' 3, it didn't stop them from taking the victory and becoming the champions of the football world. Now, the press after this called it probably the most spectacular game of the year. It was a brilliant display of offense, and many look back as it was one of the best games played in the era and really set the tone for the championship game to continue year after year. At the time, the game was not televised, so you had to be there or listen on the radio. And at the time, they were able to make $21,000 from ticket sales of the game. In today's money, that would be just over $500,000. And each player on the Bears took home an extra $210, which today would be just over $5,000. And the Giants took home $140, which is just over $3,000 today. So it was a great incentive for these players, as they still weren't making a ton of money at this time, as football was still dominated by the college game. But it gave them an opportunity and showed the possibilities of pro football in sports in America, and eventually would work its way to when the NFL merged with the AFL, becoming the Super Bowl and becoming one of the most watched sporting events each and every year, and essentially becoming its own holiday. I want to thank you for listening to today's Daily Sports History, and if you want more Bears content, check out the Unbearable Sports podcast, where they focus on giving you level-headed, deep analytical content about your favorite Windy City team, Though there may be highs and lows, you're going to get an expert analysis in a laid-back way. We'll put a link in the description for you to check them out. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it on social media wherever you're at. That way you can help us grow and I can bring you even more daily sports history.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like getting right out of bed late for work, yet your hair looks immaculate. No blow dryer, no comb, no sculpting gel. Just a flawless look. As if you walked out of your house and straight onto the cover of a men's fashion magazine.
Good morning, Steven. Oh, have you done something new with your hair? It looks amazing.
They don't have the slightest clue you were half asleep, drooling on your pillow not 10 minutes ago. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.